Call a cab, Audrey. We're busy. My father said it while I stood in my parents' dining room with my water running down my legs, one hand gripping the back of a chair, the other reaching for a phone my mother had just snatched away. Behind him, the candles were still burning. The steak was still warm. And my sister was still glaring at me as if my baby had chosen that moment just to ruin her night. At dinner, my water broke. Dad snapped. Call a cab, Audrey. We're busy. I drove to the ER alone, saved every voicemail as proof, then borrowed them from Owen. A week later, Mom cried at my door. Let me meet my grandson now. I didn't move. 6 hours earlier, I had been sitting on the edge of my bed in Austin, Texas, trying to convince myself that the tightness across my belly was nothing more than another false alarm. I was 38 weeks pregnant, 16 days from my due date, and every part of me felt stretched beyond reason. My ankles were swollen, my lower back ached in a dull, grinding way. My son had spent the afternoon pressing one tiny foot under my ribs as if he was already impatient with the world. My husband Miles had left before sunrise for what was supposed to be a normal shift at his software company. By late afternoon, he texted me that a security incident had locked him inside the server room with 2 senior engineers and a very unhappy director. Babe, I'm sorry. Phone has to stay silent for a while. Call the main line if it's urgent. I stared at that message longer than I should have, because my mother had already called twice. Her name lit up my screen again at 5:42 p.m. Mom. I let it ring until the final second, then answered. Audrey, Diane Whitman said, with that bright, polished voice she used when she had already decided what everyone else was going to do. Please tell me you're not still planning to skip dinner. Oh, I'm not feeling great, Mom. There was a tiny pause. Not concern. Calculation. You're pregnant, sweetheart. You're not made of glass. I closed my eyes. That was my mother's talent. She could wrap a slap in velvet and expect you to thank her for the softness. I told her Miles was stuck at work, that I was tired, that driving up to Round Rock by myself did not sound like a good idea. She sighed like I had personally placed a heavy suitcase on her chest. Paige is bringing Preston tonight. This is important to her. For once, don't make your sister feel like she has to apologize for being happy. There it was, Paige. My younger sister, 27 years old, beautiful in the way people forgave before she even spoke. Paige could forget a bill, wreck a plan, insult a relative at Thanksgiving, and my parents would call it stress, youth, nerves, anything except selfishness. I, on the other hand, was capable. That word had followed me since childhood like a sentence. Audrey can handle it. Audrey understands. Audrey doesn't need much. My father, Russell Whitman, believed in opportunities the way other men believed in scripture. He had spent my entire life chasing the next deal, the next investment, the next man in a blazer who promised the shortcut to the life he thought he deserved. My mother believed in appearances. She wanted our family to look successful, gracious, close. It did not matter if the foundation was cracking, as long as the Christmas photo looked expensive. And Paige had learned early that tears work better than truth. I worked as a crisis marketing consultant for small businesses. I knew how to manage public meltdowns, bad reviews, founder scandals, ruined launches. I could walk a panicked client through a public apology without raising my voice. But when my own mother said, "Don't embarrass this family, Audrey," I still felt 12 years old. I looked toward the hallway, where the hospital bag sat beside the nursery door. Miles had packed it twice, repacked it once, then taped a checklist to the handle because that was the kind of man he was. Quiet, prepared, kind without needing an audience. Another cramp tightened low in my belly. I breathed through it. "Just dinner," my mother said. 1 hour. Your sister needs support. What she meant was Paige needed witnesses. I should have said no. Instead, I changed into a soft navy maternity dress, slipped my feet into sandals, grabbed my purse, and told myself I would leave before dessert. The September heat was still sitting over Austin when I stepped outside. The air smelled like warm pavement and cut grass. I drove north toward Round Rock with one hand resting on my stomach, whispering to my son that we were only making a quick visit. "We'll be home soon, Owen," I said. At a red light, he shifted hard beneath my ribs, and I almost turned the car around. Almost. But I kept driving, because some daughters spend their whole lives mistaking obedience for love. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway, the front windows were glowing gold. Through the glass, I could see movement in the dining room. My mother's favorite china, tall candles, fresh flowers, wine glasses lined up like a magazine spread. Not a family dinner, a performance. I sat in the car for a moment, both hands on the wheel, and felt a strange heaviness settle in my chest. Then, the front door opened. My mother appeared in the doorway, smiling too widely. "There you are," she called. "Come in quickly. Preston just started telling us about his company." And just like that, I walked into the night my family would later pretend I had ruined. My mother did not hug me when I stepped inside. She took my purse, looked me over from my sandals to my hairline, and frowned as if pregnancy had been a poor styling choice. "You look exhausted," she whispered. "I told you I didn't feel well." Diane smiled toward the dining room before answering me. "Just don't lead with that. Tonight is about Paige." That sentence landed with the comfort of an old bruise. From the hallway, I could hear my father laughing in that booming voice he saved from men he wanted something from. Not friends, not family. Men with money, connections, titles, or the appearance of all three. The house smelled like rosemary, butter, and seared beef. My mother had pulled out the cream-colored china she normally protected like museum glass. There were taper candles on the table, white lilies in a crystal vase, and 2 bottles of Napa Cabernet open near my father's elbow. My parents had not prepared dinner. They had prepared evidence. Evidence that the Whitmans were polished, comfortable, worth knowing. Paige stood beside the fireplace in a champagne silk blouse, one hand resting lightly on the arm of a man I had never met. Preston Vale was tall, clean-shaven, and dressed in a navy blazer that looked too warm for Texas, but expensive enough to forgive itself. His watch caught the light before his smile did. "Audrey," Paige said, stretching my name like she was doing me a favor. "You made it." "Of course she did," my mother said quickly. "Audrey always comes through." I almost laughed. Coming through had always been my assigned role, usually after everyone else had made a mess. Preston stepped forward and offered his hand. "Preston Vale. I've heard a lot about you." "Oh, good things, I hope." He smiled wider. "Strategic things." That was the first warning. I sat near the far end of the table, not because anyone told me to, but because every other chair had already been claimed. Paige took the seat beside Preston. My father sat close enough to lean into every sentence. My mother hovered between kitchen and table, watching everyone's reactions like a director checking camera angles. Preston began talking before the salad plates were cleared. His company, ValeGrid, was apparently building an AI-driven predictive platform for small business logistics. He spoke in smooth pieces: data layer, automation, scalable model, seed round, strategic advisors. He said the current valuation was $11.2 million, and my father nearly dropped his fork. 11.2? a rustle repeated as if tasting the number. Preston gave a humble shrug that had clearly been practiced. Early stage, of course, but the right support changes everything. Paige leaned back, glowing. My mother's eyes flicked toward me. I noticed it then. Not fully, just enough. A current moving under the table. My son shifted sharply, and I pressed my palm against my belly. The tightness returned, stronger this time, low and steady. I waited for it to pass while Preston described investors in Austin who understood the future before the market caught up. My father nodded like a man standing at the edge of a gold mine. You know, he said, Miles is in cybersecurity. Preston turned toward me so smoothly, I wondered if they had rehearsed it. So I heard. My fork stopped halfway to my plate. My mother appeared behind me with the roast potatoes. And Audrey handles crisis branding, launch messaging, reputation management, that sort of thing. That sort of thing is my job, I said carefully. Paige laughed softly. Nobody said it wasn't. But the room had changed. The dinner no longer felt like a dinner. It felt like a meeting I had never agreed to attend. My father reached beside his chair and lifted a slim black folder from the sideboard. He placed it near my plate with the solemn pride of a man presenting a family Bible. Just take a look, he said. I looked at the folder, then at him. Dad, what is this? Nothing heavy, he said. Preston's deck, some technical overview, a few launch notes. Miles can glance at the security side when he has a minute, and you can help clean up the public-facing language. My stomach tightened again, and this time it stole my breath for 2 seconds. My mother noticed my face, but not my pain. Don't make that expression, she murmured. Preston leaned forward. Honestly, I'm not asking for free labor. It's more about trusted family alignment. Investors like to see that the people closest to you believe in the mission. Family alignment. There it was, dressed in startup language. They did not need me at dinner. They needed my name, Miles's expertise, my professional credibility. They wanted to turn our marriage into a line on Preston's pitch deck. I pushed the photo back an inch. I can't take this on. The silence was immediate. Paige's smile hardened. My father's hand closed around his wine glass. My mother's eyes sharpened into something cold and familiar. I placed both palms on the edge of the table and kept my voice calm. I'm due in 16 days. I'm not accepting new work, and Miles can't validate technology he hasn't properly reviewed. Preston lifted both hands as if I had misunderstood a joke. Of course, totally. No pressure. But Paige set down her fork. You always do this, she said. I looked at her. Do what? Well, make things difficult the second something good happens for me? The baby moved again. A deep ache pulled through my back. Paige, I'm not making anything difficult. I'm saying no to work I didn't agree to do. My father leaned forward. Sometimes family means helping before you're asked. I met his eyes. Then why does family only seem to mean me helping? My mother inhaled sharply. Not because I was wrong, but because I had said it in front of Preston. The candles flickered between us, and under the table, another contraction began to build. The contraction did not hit like the dramatic scenes in movies. It gathered slowly, like a fist closing somewhere deep inside me. I lowered my eyes to my plate and breathed through my nose, counting the way the instructor at our birthing class had taught us. 4 in, 6 out. Shoulders loose, jaw unclenched. Across from me, Preston kept smiling as if nothing in the room had shifted. That was what made him dangerous. Some men showed greed through sweat and desperation. Preston Vale showed his through charm. Russell, he said, turning smoothly back to my father. I completely understand Audrey's position. Boundaries matter. He said the word boundaries like he had just discovered it in a business podcast. My father gave an embarrassed chuckle. Audrey can be cautious, always has been. My mother sat down at last, placing herself between Paige and me like a referee who had already chosen a side. Cautious is one thing, Diane said. Cold is another. I stared at her. Mom. She lifted her wine glass but did not drink. Your sister finally brings home someone serious, someone with vision, and you can't even be supportive for one evening? Paige leaned into Preston's arm. It's fine. I'm used to it. That little sentence was one of her best weapons. Small, soft, poisoned. My father opened the black folder and turned it toward me again. The first page had Velgrid's logo, a sharp silver V over a map of glowing lines. Beneath it, in clean type, were words like predictive intelligence, logistics optimization, AI infrastructure. It looked expensive. It also looked empty. I had seen enough investor decks in my career to know when confidence was being used to cover missing proof. There were impressive phrases, but no clear customer list, no serious risk section, no evidence of security review, no launch budget that made sense. Dad, I said, keeping my voice low, this is not something Miles can just glance at. Security review is not a dinner favor. Preston nodded as if I had made a fascinating point. Totally fair. We frame it more informally. Miles would have hated that. In cybersecurity, informal could become irresponsible very quickly. One casual sentence, one vague email, one name in the wrong section of a deck, and suddenly people believe you had verified something you had never touched. I won't speak for my husband, I said. And I won't attach my name to a project I haven't evaluated. Paige gave a sharp laugh. Attach your name? Audrey, you make newsletters for plumbers and coffee shops. The table went still. My mother looked down at her plate. My father did not correct her. Preston did not look away. And there it was again, that old family math. Paige could insult me in public, and somehow I was the one expected to keep dinner pleasant. I felt my son move, a heavy roll beneath my ribs, as if even he objected. I help small businesses survive public disasters, I said, usually caused by people who think image can replace integrity. Preston's smile thinned. My father's face darkened. That was unnecessary. So was inviting me here under false pretenses. Diane set her glass down too hard. We invited you because you're family. No, I said. You invited me because Miles has a job title Preston wants near his company, and I have a skill set you suddenly find useful. My mother leaned forward. Her voice dropped into that private, cutting tone she used when guests were present, and she wanted the wound to stay invisible. Don't embarrass us. I looked around the table, the candles, the steak, the wine, Paige's silk blouse, Preston's watch, my father's hungry eyes. They were all waiting for me to shrink. I had been doing it for years, making myself smaller so Paige could glow brighter, laughing off comments, accepting apologies that were never spoken, showing up because my absence would be called cruelty, while their indifference was called stress. But that night, I was tired in a way that had reached my bones. I'm going home, I said. Paige sat up. Are you serious? Yes. My father's chair scraped back slightly. Sit down, Audrey. The words were quiet, but they carried the old command. For a moment, my body obeyed before my mind did. My knees felt weak. The pain in my back tightened, then spread low across my abdomen. I gripped the edge of the table. Preston glanced at Paige, uncomfortable now. Not concerned, just uncomfortable, because a pregnant woman in pain was bad for the room. My mother noticed him noticing. "Audrey," she said through a smile, "if you need a minute, use the powder room. But please don't turn this into a scene." A scene. That was what my pain was to her. I pushed my chair back carefully and stood. The room tilted just enough for me to reach for the table. "I need the restroom," I said. Paige muttered, "Of course you do." I took one step, then another. Halfway between the dining table and the hallway, my body stopped listening to me. A warm rush spilled down my legs. For one stunned second, I did not understand it. Then, I looked down at the darkening fabric of my navy dress, at the small, shining puddle forming on my mother's polished hardwood floor. No one spoke. My hand went to my stomach. My voice came out thin but clear. "My water just broke." For a moment, nobody moved. Not my mother, not my father, not Paige. Even Preston, who had built an entire personality around confidence, only stared at the floor as if childbirth were an unexpected stain on the hardwood. I gripped the side of the hallway table and forced myself to speak again. "My water broke. I need to go to the hospital." My mother's eyes jumped from my dress to the dining room, then to Preston. Her face changed, but not with fear for me, with embarrassment. "Oh, Audrey," she whispered, as if I had dropped a wine glass on purpose. A contraction rolled through me before I could answer. This one was sharper, lower, stronger than the others. I bent forward, one palm on my stomach, the other pressed against the wall. "Mom," I said, breathing hard, "please, I need help." Paige stood, but only halfway. "Are you sure?" she asked. I looked down at my soaked dress. "Yes, Paige, I'm sure." She crossed her arms, cheeks flushed. "I just mean, you've been saying you felt weird all night. Maybe you panicked." That was Paige's gift. She could watch the truth happen in front of her and still ask whether it was inconvenient enough to be false. Preston cleared his throat. "Maybe we should call someone." "Yes," I said quickly. "Call 911. I reached for my phone on the dining table, but my mother moved faster than I expected. She snatched it up first and held it against her chest. "Not like this," she said. The words confused me so badly I almost laughed. "What?" "You are not having an ambulance outside this house with all the neighbors watching." I stared at her. My baby was coming. My body had already crossed a line no one could politely uncross. And my mother was thinking about neighbors? "Give me my phone." Diane lowered her voice. "You are not humiliating your sister in front of a guest." Paige made a small, wounded sound. "Mom, don't. She'll say we're attacking her." I turned to my father. "Dad." Russell stood near his chair, one hand on the back of it, jaw tight. For a second, I still believed something in him would wake up. Some buried instinct, some memory of carrying me when I was little, some basic human decency. "Dad, please drive me." He looked at Preston. That was when my hope cracked. Not broke, not yet. Cracked. Russell's eyes moved to the folder still lying beside my plate, then to Preston's unfinished glass of wine, then back to me as if I were a problem requiring tone management. "Audrey," he said, "let's not turn this into chaos." "My water broke." "We understand that." "No, you don't." Another contraction hit, and I grabbed the chair nearest me. My knees bent without permission. I heard the scrape of wood under my hand, heard my own breath turn ragged. Preston finally stood. Maybe I should step outside. No, Diane said too quickly. Please, sit. This is just family. Family. The word sounded obscene in that room. I reached again for my phone, but Diane stepped back. Paige took it from her and carried it to the kitchen counter, setting it beside a bowl of lemons, as if distance could make my labor less real. Paige, I said, bring it back. She lifted her chin. You can handle your little emergency after dessert. Something inside me went very still. There are insults that make you angry, and there are insults that make the world go silent. That one did both. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The silk blouse, the perfect hair, the panic hiding under her cruelty because even now, even with my child coming, she could not bear the idea of losing the room. Then I looked at my mother, who was smoothing her napkin as if manners could erase what she had done. Finally, I looked at my father. Help me, I said. Russell exhaled through his nose. Then he said it. Call a cab, Audrey. We're busy. The sentence did not echo. It landed. Flat. Final. Like a door locking from the other side. I did not scream. I did not beg. I did not ask him to repeat it because some words become truer the second time, and I could not afford to hear them again. I straightened as much as my body allowed. Diane reached for my arm. Don't be dramatic. I pulled away. No. It was the smallest word I had ever said to her, and the first one that felt like mine. I moved toward the kitchen counter. Paige stepped aside, not out of kindness, but because she did not want me touching her blouse. I picked up my phone with wet, shaking fingers. Then my purse. Then my keys from the entry table. Behind me, my mother hissed, "If you walk out that door, Audrey, don't expect everyone to pretend this was acceptable." I turned back once. Preston was staring at his shoes. Paige was blinking hard, already preparing the version where she had been the victim. My father was seated again. Seated. That was the image that burned into me. Not his words, his chair. I opened the front door. The Texas heat pressed against my face like a hand. My mother called after me, "You're destroying Paige's future." I stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind me. No one followed. The porch light buzzed above me like an insect. For a few seconds, I stood on my parents' front steps with my keys digging into my palm, my dress wet, my back bent under another wave of pain. Behind the closed door, their voices blurred into one ugly sound. Not panic, not concern, argument. I could hear my mother saying my name like a warning. Paige's sharper voice rose over hers. My father said something low and final, the tone he used when he wanted the room to return to order. The door did not open. That was the first thing I truly understood. They were not coming. I made it down the steps one at a time. The driveway seemed longer than it had any right to be. My car sat under the live oak near the curb, ordinary and silent, as if it had not just become the only person willing to take me to a hospital. Halfway there, a contraction folded me over. I braced one hand on the hood and gasped into the hot September air. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. A sprinkler ticked across a neighbor's lawn. Round Rock looked peaceful in the cruel way suburbs can look peaceful while something breaks inside a house. I should have called 911 right there. I know that now. I knew it somewhere then, too. But shock does strange things. My mother had taken my phone once. Paige had moved it out of reach. My father had told me to call a cab, like I was a spilled drink on his floor. All I could think was, get away before they take another choice from me. I unlocked the car, climbed in, and slammed the door. The sound steadied me more than prayer would have. I locked it twice. Then I turned the air conditioning on full blast and sat gripping the steering wheel until my breathing came back in pieces. "My son is not dying in their driveway," I whispered. The words frightened me. Then they gave me something to hold. I started the engine. My hand shook so badly the first turn out of the neighborhood felt impossible. I drove slowly at first, headlights sliding over trimmed hedges, brick mailboxes, and American flags hanging motionless in the thick night air. At the stop sign, pain surged again. I cried out, one sharp sound I hated hearing from myself, and hit the voice command button on the wheel. "Call Tessa Monroe." The car chimed. For 3 rings, I thought she would not answer. Then Tessa's voice filled the cabin, sleepy and bright. "Aud, you okay?" "No," my voice cracked. "My water broke." She was fully awake in half a second. "Where are you?" "I leave in my parents' house." "Is Miles with you?" "No, he's at work. They wouldn't help me." Silence. Not empty silence. The kind where someone is trying not to explode because you need them useful. "What do you mean they wouldn't help you?" I turned onto the main road, blinking hard against the glare of oncoming headlights. Mom took my phone. Paige moved it. Dad told me to call a cab. Tessa swore once, low and vicious, then caught herself. "Listen to me. Are you driving?" "Yes." "Audrey, pull over if you feel like you can't control the car. I'm getting dressed. I'm going to Dell Medical. I'm calling Miles's company right now." "He won't answer." "Then I'll make somebody drag him out by the collar." A laugh tried to rise in me and became a sob instead. "Tessa, I'm here. Keep me on speaker." "Tell me what road you're on." I told her. She kept her voice firm, almost bossy, and that steadiness became a rope thrown across dark water. She asked how far apart the contractions were. I did not know. Time had become headlights and pain. By the time I reached the entrance ramp for I-35, sweat had soaked the back of my neck. The highway was a river of red tail lights and white glare. Trucks growled beside me. A motorcycle shot past like anger with an engine. Another contraction came as I merged. I forced my eyes open wide. 4 in, 6 out. Grip the wheel. Stay alive. Tessa was still talking. "You are not alone. Do you hear me? They may have failed you, but you are not alone." My father's sentence flashed through my mind. "We're busy." I looked at the road ahead, at the lone black stretch toward Austin, and felt fear harden into something colder. They had chosen Preston's fantasy over my child's first breath. That was not a misunderstanding. That was a verdict. And before the night was over, I would become someone they could no longer summon, shame, or use. By the time the lights of Dell Medical came into view, I had stopped thinking in full sentences. Exit. Breathe. Don't close your eyes. The parking lane outside the emergency entrance looked almost too bright, washed in white light and glass reflections. I pulled in crooked, close enough to the curb that the front tire scraped. For one terrifying second, I could not make my fingers release the steering wheel. Then another contraction tore through me. I opened the door and tried to stand. My legs nearly folded. A security guard by the entrance turned his head, saw my dress, saw my face, and broke into a run. "Ma'am, are you in labor?" I wanted to say something calm, something adult, something that explained I was not usually the kind of woman who arrived at an emergency room alone with shaking hands and wet sandals. Instead, I said, "My water broke. I drove from Round Rock." His expression changed. Not judgment, alarm. He waved toward the doors and shouted for a nurse. Within seconds, a wheelchair appeared behind me. A woman in blue scrubs knelt in front of me, her voice steady and clear. "Hi, I'm Kelly. We're going to take care of you. How far along are you?" 38 weeks. "Any bleeding?" "I don't know. I don't think so." "Contractions. How far apart?" "I don't know." That answer scared me more than the question. The nurse touched my shoulder. "That's okay. We'll figure it out." No one sighed. No one rolled their eyes. No one asked me to wait until dessert. They moved. Inside, the air was cold enough to make me shake harder. Forms appeared. A bracelet snapped around my wrist. Someone asked my name, date of birth, allergies, emergency contact. I gave Miles's name and number, then Tessa's, because my mind refused to trust family as a category anymore. A doctor came in with kind eyes and a serious mouth. She checked me, listened, watched the monitor as another nurse strapped bands across my belly. The room filled with sound, my pulse, the baby's heartbeat, a machine printing thin paper like it was recording the argument between fear and hope. The doctor looked at the screen longer than I wanted her to. "What?" I asked. "His heart rate dipped a little during that contraction," she said. "It came back up. We're watching closely." His. Owen. My son was no longer an idea inside me. He was a person, fighting through the consequences of adults who had stayed seated. The doctor adjusted her gloves. "The good news is you got here." The good news. That meant there was bad news close enough to smell. I turned my head away and cried without covering my face. I was too tired to perform dignity. My phone buzzed on the bed. Tessa. I answered with one hand while a nurse adjusted the IV. "I'm 5 minutes out," she said. Her breathing was fast, keys jingling in the background. "And I got Miles." "You did?" I called the main line, then security, then I may have used the phrase, "pregnant wife abandoned in active labor." They found him. A broken sound left me, half laugh, half sob. "He's coming?" "He's already on his way." "Audrey, listen to me. Whatever they said, whatever they did, none of this is your fault." I closed my eyes. For 32 years, fault had been assigned to me before facts were gathered. If Paige cried, I was cold. If Mom felt embarrassed, I was difficult. If Dad lost money, I should have warned him sooner or supported him better. But tonight had witnesses: a security guard, a nurse, a doctor, a hospital record that would say what my family would later try to soften. Patient arrived alone, active labor, water broken, distressed. The door opened hard enough to hit the wall. Miles stood there in his wrinkled dress shirt, face pale, eyes wild in a way I had never seen before. For a second, he did not move. Then he crossed the room and took my hand like it was the only solid thing left in the world. "I'm here," he said. "I'm here. I'm so sorry." I squeezed his fingers as another contraction built. "Don't apologize for a room you weren't in." His mouth tightened. Tessa told me. "Well, not all of it." "Well, then tell me later. Right now, you and Owen are my whole world." I looked at the monitor. The line dipped again, then climbed. A nurse told me to breathe. Miles breathed with me, forehead pressed near my temple, counting softly like he could lend me his lungs. Outside that room, somewhere across the city, my parents' dinner was probably over. Plates cleared, candles blown out, Preston comforted, Paige reassured. But in that hospital bed, with Miles's hand around mine, and strangers moving with more love than my blood had shown, I finally understood something. I had not left my family in Round Rock. They had left me first. Labor did not feel like one long pain. It felt like waves trying to erase the shore. Every time I thought my body had reached the edge, another contraction climbed higher, sharper, meaner. The room narrowed to the monitor, Miles's hand, the nurse's voice, and the strange animal sound that kept coming out of my throat. "You're doing great," Nurse Kelly said. I wanted to tell her I was not doing great. I was falling apart in sections. My back felt split open. My legs trembled. My mouth was dry no matter how many ice chips Miles fed me. But Kelly looked me in the eye when she spoke. That mattered. The doctor came in and checked the monitor again. Owen's heartbeat had dipped twice more, each time recovering, each time stealing years off my life. "We're going to keep repositioning you," she said. "He's tolerating labor, but he's telling us he wants attention." Miles swallowed hard beside me. I heard it. That small sound of a man trying to be brave quietly. He leaned close. "I'm right here, babe." "I know." I should have been reachable. "No," I said, gripping his fingers as another wave rose. "You were working. They were watching me." His face changed. Not with surprise. With rage, he refused to spin in front of me. That was one reason I loved Miles. He knew anger could wait when safety could not. Tessa arrived sometime after midnight, cheeks flushed, hair pulled into a crooked ponytail. She was not allowed into the delivery room at first, so she stood in the hall like a guard dog in yoga pants, texting Miles updates from family members I had not asked her to contact. "Your mom called me twice," she wrote. Then another message. I did not answer. I almost smiled. The hours blurred. I threw up once. I cried twice. I apologized to a nurse for squeezing her hand too hard, and she laughed softly and said, "Honey, I've had women threaten to haunt me. You're fine." For the first time that night, someone called me honey and did not use it as a leash. Near dawn, the room changed. The doctor's voice became more focused. A second nurse came in. Miles helped hold one of my legs, his face wet now, though I did not know when he had started crying. "One more good push, Audrey," the doctor said. "I can't." "You can." "I can't." Miles bent close to my ear. "You already got him here. Bring him the rest of the way." That sentence found a door in me. I pushed with everything I had left. The world became pressure, light, sound. Then suddenly, a cry. Small, furious, alive. The doctor lifted him for half a second, and I saw a red, wrinkled, beautiful face, twisted in protest at being born into such nonsense. Then Owen Miles Granger was on my chest, warm, slippery, real. His tiny mouth opened against my skin, and his cry broke into hiccuping breaths. I touched his back with 2 fingers because I was afraid my whole hand would be too heavy for him. "Hi," I whispered. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm your mom." My mom. The words landed inside me differently than daughter ever had. Daughter had meant obligation, apology, performance. Come when called, smile when cut. Forgive before anyone asked. Mother meant shield. Mother meant door. Mother meant no. Miles rested one hand over mine on Owen's back. His shoulders shook once, silently. "He's perfect," he said. I looked at our son, at the dark hair pasted to his head, at the tiny fist pressed under his chin, and I felt something ancient and final move through me. I had spent my life trying to become easy enough for my parents to love. But Owen would not inherit that hunger. He would never stand in a room full of family and wonder whether his pain was inconvenient. He would never be trained to earn kindness by disappearing. He would never watch people stay seated while he needed help and be told that was love. A nurse took Owen briefly to check him. I watched every second until she brought him back. Miles kissed my forehead. Your parents have been calling. My body went cold despite the blanket. Did they ask about him? Miles hesitated. That was answer enough. I closed my eyes. Outside the window, the sky over Austin was turning pale. Somewhere in that light, my old life was still standing, expecting me to come back and apologize. I opened my eyes and looked at my son. I was not going back. By the time Owen was placed back on my chest, the room had gone quiet. My body still shook from labor, but he was breathing against my skin. Miles sat beside me with one hand over ours. Tessa stood by the window, holding hospital coffee like she was guarding a crime scene. Then my phone buzzed. Miles looked at the screen and his face closed. Your mother. How many? I asked. 6 from Diane, 3 from Russell, 4 from Paige. Voicemails. No text asking if I was alive. No message asking whether the baby made it. Just calls, stacked like demand. Play them, I said. I need to hear what they chose. He tapped the first voicemail. My mother's voice filled the room, tight with anger, not fear. Audrey, I hope you're proud of yourself. Paige is sobbing. Preston left early because the whole evening became impossible. You turned a beautiful family dinner into some kind of emergency performance. You owe your sister an apology. Owen made a tiny sound against my chest. Miles played the next one. My father. Audrey, this is your dad. I don't appreciate the way you handled tonight. We were in the middle of a serious conversation that could affect this family's future. You embarrassed your mother, upset Paige, and made Preston uncomfortable. Call me when you calm down. Not one word about his grandson. Not one word about the hospital. Then Paige. You always do this. I finally meet someone who sees my potential, and you literally turn it into your labor story. I stared at the ceiling. All my life, I had imagined there was a bottom. Surely childbirth would be the bottom. Surely a newborn would be sacred enough to stop the blame. But people who worship themselves can step over anything, even a baby. Tessa set the coffee down. They know what they did. They hate that you survived it with witnesses. Miles picked up my phone. Do you want them blocked? The daughter in me waited for guilt. It did not come. Only Owen's warm weight on my chest. Yes, I said. Miles blocked Diane. Then Russell. Then Paige. 3 names vanished, and with each one, something loosened in my ribs. If you're listening to Audrey's story and believe no woman should be abandoned in her most dangerous hour, please leave a like and share your advice in the comments. What would you tell Audrey to do next? The truth her family tried to bury has only begun to surface. Save the voicemails, I said. Miles nodded. Already did. One side demanded proof of my pain. The other preserved proof because they believed me before I begged. Austin was waking up. My son had been born. My family had been blocked. Silence did not feel like punishment anymore. It felt like safety. We brought Owen home 3 days later. The nurse rolled me to the hospital entrance, with Owen tucked against my chest, his tiny blue cap slipping sideways every time he moved. Miles carried the diaper bag, the discharge folder, and the kind of fear new fathers try to hide by checking the car seat straps 6 times. The Texas sun was bright enough to make me squint. I expected my phone to feel heavy in my lap, full of guilt, accusations, missed calls from people I had been trained to answer. But it was quiet. Diane, Russell, and Paige were blocked. For the first time in my life, my mother could not reach into my day and rearrange my breathing. At our apartment in Austin, I expected clutter and exhaustion. Instead, I opened the door and smelled chicken soup, warm cornbread, and lemon cleaner. Eileen Granger stood in our kitchen, wearing jeans, sneakers, and one of Miles's old college sweatshirts. She did not rush at the baby. She did not grab him from my arms. She simply looked at me and said, "Sweetheart, do you want food, a shower, or sleep first?" I almost cried because she offered choices. Hale Granger appeared from the nursery holding a screwdriver. "Shelf's fixed," he said. "Was leaning just enough to annoy me." That was Harold's way. He loved with tools, errands, and full gas tanks. Miles's parents had driven down from Dallas before sunrise. They had stocked the fridge, folded burp cloths, washed the spare sheets, and put fresh towels in the bathroom. No speeches, no questions designed to dig up drama. No performance for neighbors, just help. Tessa arrived an hour later with muffins, diapers, and a grocery bag full of things I had forgotten existed. Dry shampoo, lip balm, oat bars, and a ridiculous tiny onesie that said local legend. "You look like a woman who had a baby and a family exorcism in the same week," she said. For the first time since the dinner, I laughed without it hurting. The days that followed were not graceful. Owen cried at 2 a.m. and 3:15 and 4:40. My body ached in private places no one warns you about honestly. I leaked milk through clean shirts. I cried over a dropped spoon. Miles learned to swaddle like a man defusing a bomb, but when I stumbled, someone reached. Eileen reheated soup without making me ask. Harold walked the trash down and came back with coffee. Tessa sat on the floor beside me while I fed Owen and talked about everything except my parents until I was ready. One evening, after everyone had gone quiet, I watched Harold rocking Owen near the window. He did not know I could see his face reflected in the glass. He was smiling down at my son with no hunger in it, no claim, no ownership, only wonder. That was when the grief hit. Not because I missed my parents, because I finally understood what I had been missing. Family was not the people who posed beside you at holidays and called it love. Family was who showed up when your blood ran cold. Miles found me crying in the hallway and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "They don't get near him," I whispered. "No," he said, "they don't." That night, Miles changed our passwords, tightened every privacy setting, and turned on two-factor authentication across our accounts. I posted one photo of Owen's hand curled around my finger. No face, no location, no invitation. By morning, strange comments appeared under old photos. "Poor Paige. Some people need all the attention." Postpartum jealousy is sad. Your mother deserves to meet her grandson. The names were unfamiliar. The cruelty was not. Miles wanted to delete them. I stopped him. "No," I said, taking screenshots. "Receipts first." I saved every comment, every timestamp, every profile link, every voicemail, every call log. I created a folder on my laptop and named it Round Rock. The truth did not need to shout. It only needed a receipt. The doorbell rang while Owen was asleep on my chest. I froze before I moved. That was what my mother had trained into me. The belief that any interruption might become my responsibility. Miles looked up from the kitchen table, where he was paying bills with one hand and holding a cold cup of coffee with the other. "You expecting anyone?" "No." The bell rang again, longer. Not a polite press. A demand. Miles opened the camera app on his phone. His jaw tightened before he turned the screen toward me. Diane stood outside our apartment door holding blue balloons that said, "It's a boy." Russell stood behind her in a golf shirt, arms folded, face arranged into offended dignity. Paige leaned against the hallway wall with a gift bag dangling from two fingers, her phone already in her hand. My milk let down from stress before I could even stand. "No," I whispered. Miles took Owen gently from my arms. "You don't have to open it." But I did. Not because they deserved me, because they needed to hear the word no with my door between us and my son behind me. I wrapped my robe tighter and opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. My mother's smile appeared first, bright, church-ready, rotten underneath. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, "look at you." I did not answer. Her eyes tried to move past me into the apartment. "We came to meet our grandson." "My son is sleeping." Russell stepped forward. "Audrey, open the door." Once, that tone would have made my hands move before my mind caught up. This time, I stayed still. "You weren't invited." Paige laughed under her breath. "Wow, that's healthy." Diane lifted the balloons higher, like decorations could erase a crime. "We are trying to heal as a family." "No," I said. "You're trying to control the story." My mother's smile cracked. Russell lowered his voice. "Don't do this in the hallway." "Well, you had no problem doing what you did in a dining room." Paige pushed off the wall. "What we did? Audrey, you drove yourself to the hospital. Clearly, it wasn't that serious." For a moment, the hallway disappeared. I was back on I-35, hands locked around the wheel, headlights bleeding together, my son's life beating under a hospital monitor I had not reached yet. Miles came up behind me, Owen no longer in his arms. He must have placed him in the bassinet. His presence at my back steadied me without taking over. I looked at Paige. "You watched Mom take my phone." Her mouth opened. "You placed it on the kitchen counter where I couldn't reach it." "That is not..." I turned to my mother. "You told me I was humiliating Paige because I wanted to call 911. Diane flushed. "I was trying to prevent panic. You were trying to prevent witnesses." Russell's face hardened. "Enough." "No, Dad, not enough. You told your pregnant daughter to call a cab while her water was on your floor." A neighbor's door clicked somewhere down the hall. Diane's eyes darted toward the sound. Still worried about being seen. Never about what had been done. She leaned closer. "Texas has grandparents' rights, Audrey. Don't force us to use them." Miles's voice came calm and cold over my shoulder. "Grandparents' rights are not a magic key. Not when both parents are alive, married, and protecting a newborn from people who endangered his mother." Russell looked at him like Miles had spoken out of turn in his own home. "This is Whitman family business." Miles stepped beside me. "No, this is Granger family safety." Paige lifted her phone slightly. I looked straight at the lens. "You don't get to ignore my son's first breath and then ask for a front row seat in his life." Her hand dropped. For once, Paige had no comeback ready. Diane's face twisted. "After everything I sacrificed for you?" I almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because the script was so old it had started to sound cheap. "You sacrificed my emergency for Paige's dinner." The balloons bumped softly against the ceiling. Such a cheerful sound for such an ugly moment. Miles pointed toward the camera above the door. "This visit is recorded. If you come here uninvited again, we'll treat it as harassment." Russell grabbed Diane's elbow. Pride, not remorse, pulled him back. Paige turned first, heels sharp against the hallway floor. My mother looked at me one last time, eyes wet now that an audience might appear. "You're breaking this family." I closed the door, and for the first time, I did not apologize for the sound it made. The first client email came on a Tuesday morning while I was feeding Owen. He had one tiny hand pressed against my chest, his eyes closed, his whole body relaxed in the complete trust only a newborn can give. I was still learning how to hold that trust without feeling terrified by it. My laptop chimed from the coffee table. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the subject line: temporary pause on contract. My stomach dropped before I opened it. The message was polite. That made it worse. The client, a family-owned HVAC company in San Marcos, said they had received concerning information about my current emotional stability and thought it might be best to pause our campaign until I had more time to recover personally. No one wrote like that unless someone had scared them. I read the email twice, then a third time, while Owen slept against me. Miles came in from the kitchen and saw my face. What happened? I turned the laptop toward him. He read it silently. His expression did not explode. It went still, which was worse. Diane, he said. I wanted to say no. I wanted to believe even my mother would not reach into my work, into the income that paid for Owen's diapers and our rent, just because I had refused to open my door. But wanting had never made Diane better. By noon, another message arrived. This one was from a coffee shop owner I had helped through a bad review storm the year before. Her name was Melissa, and unlike the first client, she did not hide behind careful words. Audrey, your mother called my office. She said you're unstable after birth and that you've been targeting your sister out of jealousy. I don't believe her, but I thought you should know. She left a voicemail. Forwarding it now. The attachment sat at the bottom of the email like a loaded gun. Miles asked, "Do you want me to listen first?" "No," I said. "I need to know." I pressed play. My mother's voice came through bright and wounded. "Hi, Melissa. This is Diane Whitman, Audrey's mother. I hate to even make this call, but as her family, we're very worried. She's not herself right now. She's been acting erratically since the baby, and I would feel terrible if a client got hurt because no one warned them." I stopped the recording, not because I could not take it, because I had heard enough to know what it was. A lie dressed as concern. Miles shut the laptop halfway, then opened it again as if even the machine offended him. "That's defamation." "It's strategy," I said quietly. He looked at me. I knew this language. Diane was not screaming in public. She was poisoning private rooms. She was making herself sound like a worried mother, so any damage to me would look accidental. That was how reputation died in polite circles. Not from one big accusation, from whispers with clean hands. I laid Owen in his bassinet and stood carefully. My body still hurt when I moved too fast, but something sharper than pain held me upright. I created a second folder inside Round Rock, Client Interference. I saved the email, downloaded the voicemail, screenshotted the timestamp. Wrote a note while my memory was fresh. Date, time, client name, contract status, financial risk. Miles watched me for a moment. "You're too calm." "No," I said. "I'm trained." By late afternoon, we had a consultation with a civil attorney in Austin. Her name was Renee Calder, and she listened without interrupting while I explained the dinner, the hospital record, the voicemails, the fake comments, the visit with balloons, and now the calls to clients. When I finished, she tapped her pen once against her legal pad. "They are counting on you reacting emotionally," she said. "Yes. So we won't give them that." For the first time all day, I breathed fully. Renee explained that the first step would be a formal demand letter. It would order Diane, Russell, and Paige to stop contacting me, stop mentioning Owen online, stop coming to our home, and stop making false statements to my clients or professional contacts. It is not a court order, she said, but it creates a record. If they continue, we build from there. A record. My mother had lived for appearances. I was about to introduce her to documentation. That night, after Owen finally fell asleep, I received a text from an unknown number. You're making me look like a monster. No name. It did not need one. I forwarded it to Renee without replying. Miles sat beside me on the couch, his shoulder warm against mine. You okay? I looked at our son sleeping in the dim light, safe behind a locked door my mother did not control. No, I said, but I'm done being easy to hurt. The email arrived from a former client named Graham Ellis. Graham owned a small logistics company outside Austin, the kind of business that ran on early mornings, diesel receipts, and men who trusted handshakes more than software. I had helped him 2 years earlier when a failed delivery contract almost buried his reputation. His message was short. Audrey, quick question. Are you advising VailGrid on launch strategy? Your name is in their investor deck. Wanted to confirm before I take another meeting. For a few seconds, I simply stared at the screen. Then I opened the attachment. VailGrid's logo appeared first, sleek in silver over dark blue. The deck looked better than it had at dinner. Cleaner fonts, better mock-ups, more confident lies. I clicked through the slides. Market opportunity, AI logistics intelligence, seed expansion, strategic support. Then I saw it. Advisory support. Audrey Whitman Granger, communication strategy and crisis positioning. Under my name was Miles's. Miles Granger, cybersecurity architecture review. My mouth went dry. Beneath both names in smaller text was a phrase that made my whole body go cold. Family-backed technical and communications support secured. Secured. As if I had signed something. As if Miles had reviewed something. As if our marriage, our careers, and our last name were decorations Preston could place on a slide to make strangers feel safe handing him money. I called Miles into the room. He read the page once, then again. His face changed in a way I had only seen once before, when a junior engineer had accidentally pushed a vulnerable build toward production. Code focus. I have never seen a line of their code, he said. I know. I never signed an NDA, never reviewed a diagram, never gave a verbal okay. I know. He looked at me. Audrey, this is not family drama anymore. No, I said. It's documentation. I forwarded the deck to Renee. Then I wrote an email to Russell and Preston, copying Renee but not Diane or Paige. I kept it plain because anger has a way of making legal emails look like diary entries. Preston and Russell, Miles Granger and I have not agreed to advise VailGrid in any capacity. Miles has not reviewed VailGrid's cybersecurity architecture, code, infrastructure, or technical claims. I have not advised VailGrid on communications, launch strategy, crisis positioning, or investor messaging. You do not have permission to use our names, marriage, professional titles, or family relationship in any pitch deck, investor conversation, marketing material, or verbal representation. Remove our names immediately and confirm in writing. Audrey Whitman Granger. I read it 3 times before sending. Miles stood behind me, one hand on my shoulder. Send it, he said. So I did. Russell answered in 23 minutes. Not Preston. My father. You are being ridiculous. No one claimed you were employees. This is exactly why Paige feels you can never be happy for her. Preston is trying to build something meaningful, and you are still determined to punish this family because one dinner did not revolve around you. I laughed once. It sounded nothing like humor. One dinner. That was what my father called the night his grandson almost arrived in a car on I-35. Miles read over my shoulder. He just admitted he knows there's a dispute. Yes, I said, saving the email into the folder. He did. I replied to Graham next. I kept that one even shorter. Graham, no. I am not advising Velgrid. Miles has not reviewed their technology or security architecture. If our names appear in their materials, that was done without our consent. Please request direct written verification from Preston Vale and his legal counsel before relying on any such claim. Best, Audrey Graham responded 10 minutes later. That is very useful to know. I'll be asking more questions. I sat back and felt the room settle around me. Owen was asleep nearby, one fist pressed beside his cheek. Miles was already drafting his own formal denial for Renee to keep on file. Nobody had shouted. Nobody had posted. Nobody had threatened. And still, something had shifted. For years, my family had counted on me to absorb the lie so everyone else could stay comfortable. This time, I let the lie stand under a light. And lies, I had learned, were a lot like cheap stage sets. From the audience, they looked solid. From the side, you could see every nail holding them up. My mother had always believed brunch could fix a narrative. Not a marriage, not a wound, not a betrayal. A narrative. Give Diane Whitman a linen tablecloth, mimosas in thin glasses, smoked salmon, fruit arranged by color, and 3 women from the neighborhood saying, "Oh, Diane, everything looks lovely." And she could convince herself the truth had no right to enter the room. That Sunday, she tried to use Owen the same way. I found out from Aunt Marlene. Marlene Price was my mother's younger cousin, though everyone called her Aunt because Southern families assign titles more by feeling than by genealogy. She had always been kind to me in a distant way, the kind of woman who brought casseroles after funerals, but never asked too many questions while the body was still warm. Her text came at 9:18 a.m. "Are you bringing the baby to your mom's today?" She said it's a welcome brunch for him. I was sitting on the bedroom floor, folding onesies while Owen slept in his bassinet. For a moment, the room tilted. Miles was in the kitchen washing bottles. I walked out with the phone in my hand and showed him the message. His expression hardened. She invited people to meet our son without asking us? She invited people to judge me for not showing up. That was the cleaner version. The crueler version was that my mother had found another table to set, another audience to feed, another way to make my newborn into proof that she was the injured party. I typed back carefully. No, we were not invited and we did not agree to bring Owen anywhere. Please don't share his photos or information. Marlene replied almost immediately. Audrey, what is going on? I looked at Owen through the bedroom doorway. His mouth moved in his sleep, soft and unaware. He had no idea grown adults were already trying to make his existence useful. I did not answer Marlene yet. Instead, I called Renee. By then, our attorney had already sent the demand letter. But Diane had apparently decided that legal language was just another sound she could ignore if enough people were watching. Renee did not sound surprised. That helps us, she said. Not emotionally, I know, but legally, yes. It shows continued conduct after notice. Can you send something now? I can send a written reminder to Diane and Russell, copying the same addresses, stating they have no permission to use your child's name, image, birth, or family status to pressure contact. Do it. At 11:06 a.m., while my mother's guests were probably lifting forks over quiche and laughing too politely, Renee's email landed. Subject: continued unauthorized references to minor child. I imagined Diane opening it on her phone, smile freezing just enough for someone to notice. Later, Marlene told me that was exactly what happened. My mother had been standing near the kitchen island, one hand on a pitcher of orange juice, telling everyone how heartbroken she was that I had become so sensitive after birth. Paige sat nearby in a pale pink dress, nodding with damp eyes. Russell was outside with two men from his golf circle, discussing Preston's Austin tech opportunity like a man already counting money. Then Diane checked her phone. Marlene said the color left her face. Just for a second. But that second mattered, because people who are telling the truth do not look tracked when lawyers ask them to stop using a baby as bait. At 12:22 p.m., Marlene texted again. I need to understand. Did your father really tell you to call a cab? I sat very still. There are questions that open doors you were too tired to knock on. I sent her only what was safe. The hospital intake note with private details blacked out. The doorbell camera clip of Diane threatening grandparents' rights. Screenshots of fake comments. And the voicemail where my father said I had embarrassed the family and needed to calm down. Marlene did not respond for 20 minutes. When she did, there were no exclamation marks, only this. I am so sorry. I believed the wrong person. I read it 3 times. It did not heal me, but it mattered. Because my mother had built her power on being the only narrator in every room. That Sunday, for the first time, someone in one of those rooms looked past the flowers, the china, and the chilled champagne, and saw the knife under the table. The first call came from Graham Ellis on a Thursday afternoon. Owen was asleep in his swing, making tiny sighing sounds every few breaths. I had just opened a client draft when Graham's name appeared on my screen. I answered quietly. Hey, Graham. He skipped the small talk. Did you know another advisor on Preston's deck says he never agreed to be listed? I closed my laptop halfway. No. That makes 3 of you. 3. The number sat between us like a warning light. Graham exhaled. I asked Preston for written confirmation from every advisor. He told me family tension was creating confusion. I almost smiled. Family tension. That was a beautiful phrase for theft. What did he give you? A longer meeting invite. Of course he had. Men like Preston rarely answered questions directly when they could schedule confidence instead. I looked toward Owen. His tiny fist opened and closed against the blanket. Graham, I can only speak for myself and Miles. We did not consent. We did not review. We did not advise. I know. That's why I called. A few of us are asking for an independent audit before anyone wires another dollar. Good, I said. After we hung up, I forwarded the note to Renee and Miles. I did not post about it. I did not call Paige. I did not warn my father. Because warnings had become another thing he expected me to provide for free. That evening, Miles came home with takeout barbecue and the kind of expression that meant he had been thinking too much. I looked at the public parts of Velgrid's site, he said while setting containers on the counter. Nothing private, nothing invasive. Okay. A lot of their technical language is copied from public AI infrastructure articles, changed just enough to sound original. That bad? It reads like someone dressed a cardboard box in a lab coat. Despite everything, I laughed. Then I stopped. Because the truth was not funny for the people who had believed it. Russell had told 2 men from his golf circle that Miles had looked under the hood. That phrase made my skin crawl. Miles had not looked under anything. He had been turned into a hood ornament for a car with no engine. By the next week, questions were spreading. Investors wanted proof of user numbers. Preston sent screenshots no one could verify. They wanted customer contracts. He sent pipeline conversations. They wanted permission letters for partner logos. He blamed a junior designer. Paige kept posting through it. Her Instagram showed rooftop cocktails, a weekend in Fredericksburg, a new cream-colored dress, and Preston's hand on her knee. Every caption sounded like an audition for a life she had not been given yet. Building with a visionary, proud of this man, big things coming. I wondered how much of it went on her credit card. Diane commented under every post with hearts and prayers, as if God had become part of Preston's investor relations team. Meanwhile, the emails in my Round Rock folder kept multiplying. Renee received a letter from one investor's attorney asking whether I would sign a declaration confirming I had never worked with VailGrid. She told me not to panic. It was routine. It was useful. It was also the first time my refusal became part of someone else's formal record. I signed the truth, nothing more. That night, Russell called from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. His voice sounded thinner than I remembered. Audrey, this has gone far enough. Preston says your little clarification email has caused unnecessary concern. If you had just supported your sister, none of this would be happening. I saved the voicemail. Miles stood in the nursery doorway, watching me label the file. Does it hurt less? He asked. No, I said, but it surprises me less. That was progress of a kind. A month earlier, I would have tried to explain myself. I would have reminded my father that truth was not sabotage, that using our names was wrong, that he should be angry at Preston instead of me. Now I understood. Russell was not searching for the truth. He was searching for someone cheaper to blame. And for the first time in my life, I was unavailable. The audit report did not arrive with thunder. It arrived as a forwarded PDF from Graham Ellis on a gray Monday morning, while Owen was on the rug learning how to roll from his back to his side. The message above it was only one line. You were right to stay away. I opened the file after Owen fell asleep. VailGrid had no signed enterprise customers. Its user numbers were inflated through trial accounts and duplicate test profiles. 2 partner logos had been used without written permission. 4 advisors listed in the deck had never agreed to serve. The product demo Preston had shown investors was partly manual, with the contractor feeding responses behind the scenes. Miles read over my shoulder and said nothing for a long time. Then he pointed to one paragraph. He paid himself before he built the product. Preston had drawn a founder salary large enough to make my father call it vision if someone else said it first. He had used investor funds for luxury car rentals, private dinners, event photography, and a launch party for software that barely worked. By noon, the first threat of civil action was circulating among investors. By Friday, Preston Vail was gone. Not formally, not bravely, just gone. His Austin apartment had been cleared. His office mailbox was full. His phone went straight to voicemail. Paige posted nothing for 2 days, which was how I knew something inside her fantasy had cracked. Marlene called me that evening. I don't want to gossip, she said, which meant she absolutely had news and felt bad about it. Tell me, your father took out a home equity loan. I closed my eyes. How much? Enough that people are whispering foreclosure if he can't stabilize things. Of course he had. Russell Whitman had not invested money he could afford to lose. He had bet the house on a man in a blazer because the dream sounded expensive. And Paige? I asked. Marlene sighed. Credit cards, dresses, trips, dinners. She thought Preston was going to propose. I looked across the room at Owen's tiny socks scattered near the couch. Such small, honest things. What about Diane? Well, she's telling people Preston deceived the whole family. Well, she's not wrong. No, Marlene said softly. but she keeps leaving out the part where they helped him look trustworthy. That was the part my parents never understood. A lie did not need you to invent it. Sometimes it only needed you to smile beside it, pour wine over it, and call your daughter difficult when she refused to clap. The following week, one of Russell's golf friends sent Miles an email asking whether he had ever informally validated Velgrid's security claims. Miles answered with one sentence and copied Renee. No, I did not review, validate, endorse, or advise Velgrid in any capacity. Clean. Final. Unusable for anyone's excuse. Russell left another voicemail after that. You have no idea what you've done to this family. I played it once, saved it, and closed the folder. For years, that sentence would have made me run toward him with the bucket, desperate to put out whatever fire he had started and blamed on me. This time, I looked at Owen sleeping in his crib, one hand open beside his cheek. I didn't do this, I whispered. And I believed myself. Preston had lied. Paige had worshipped the lie. Diane had decorated it. Russell had funded it. I had only stepped out of the photograph before it caught fire. That night, Miles and I ate cold barbecue at the kitchen counter because Owen refused to sleep anywhere but against my shoulder. I told Miles what Marlene had said about the house. He watched my face carefully. Are you okay? No, I said, but I'm not responsible. Outside, Austin traffic hummed beyond the windows. Inside, my son breathed against my collarbone, warm and real. My parents had chosen an illusion of wealth over my emergency, over my child, over the truth. Now the illusion had sent them a bill. Owen took his first steps on a Saturday morning in our living room. Not for an audience, not for a camera, not on anyone's schedule. He was standing between the couch and the coffee table, one hand sticky from banana, his face serious with baby determination. Miles knelt a few feet away with both arms open. Come on, buddy, he whispered. Owen wobbled. I held my breath. Then my son lifted one foot, planted it, lifted the other, and fell forward into his father's arms with a startled laugh that filled the whole apartment. Miles looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Did you see that? I laughed and cried at the same time. I saw. That was our life now. Small miracles. Warm coffee gone cold. Laundry baskets in hallways. Eileen mailing homemade cookies from Dallas because she claimed overnight shipping was cheaper than worrying. Harold calling Miles to ask if the nursery shelf was still holding, as if he had not built it strong enough to survive a hurricane. Tessa showing up with takeout and opinions. My work had grown too. Without Diane's emergencies, Paige's jealousy, and Russell's schemes pulling pieces out of me, I had energy again. Clients referred clients. A local restaurant group hired me for a full crisis plan. Miles had been promoted to lead security architect, which he celebrated by buying Owen a ridiculous stuffed armadillo. Peace did not look glamorous. It looked like nobody punishing me for having needs. My parents' lives had moved in the opposite direction. Preston was facing lawsuits. Paige had moved back into the Round Rock house with credit card debt and no engagement ring. Diane stopped posting family photos for a while, which told me more than any confession could. Russell was fighting pressure from the men he had encouraged to invest, and the home equity loan sat over the house like storm clouds. I knew all of this through Marlene. I never asked for extra details. The truth came without chasing. Then, one evening, my phone rang from a number I did not know. Owen was asleep. Miles was loading the dishwasher. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello? A pause. Audrey. My father's voice. My body remembered fear before my mind could reject it. What do you want, Dad? He did not ask about Owen. He did not ask if I was healthy. He did not say the words that had been missing for almost a year. I'm sorry. Instead, he cleared his throat. I need you to talk to Miles. I looked toward the kitchen. Miles turned off the water, already watching me. About what? An email. Nothing dramatic. Just a statement saying Preston's technology looked credible at the time. Not an endorsement. Just enough to show I had reason to believe the investment was sound. There it was. Not remorse. Use. After everything, my father still saw me as a bridge back to his own comfort. I thought of the dining room, the candles, Paige's silk blouse, my mother's hand around my phone, my father seated while I begged. And suddenly, I did not feel 12 years old. I felt 33, tired, loved, and completely free. No. Audrey, listen to me. No, Dad. His voice sharpened. Do you understand what could happen to this family? I looked at Owen's baby monitor. My son slept on his side, one fist tucked under his chin, safe in a home where his pain would never be called inconvenient. You taught me people can be too busy for an emergency, I said. I learned. Silence. Then colder. So you're going to abandon us? No. I'm going to protect my family. We are your family. I breathed in slowly. Not the night Owen was born. He said my name once more, but I ended the call before he could turn it into another hook. Then I sent the number to Renee. Miles crossed the room and sat beside me. He did not ask if I wanted to call back. He knew. I leaned into him and listened to the dishwasher hum, to Owen breathing through the monitor, to the quiet my parents had once made me fear. That quiet was not emptiness. It was the sound of no one controlling me. My revenge was never ruining them. They had done that with greed, pride, and borrowed lies. My revenge was simpler. I stopped saving them from the truth. And I built a home where my son would never have to wonder whether being loved depended on being useful. In life, blood can begin a family, but only love, responsibility, and presence can keep one alive. A person who abandons you in your most dangerous hour does not get to demand loyalty when their own choices collapse. Protecting your peace is not cruelty. Sometimes it is the first honest act of love you give yourself. If this story touched you, please leave a like for Revenge Glow. If you have any thoughts or advice, share them in the comments below and tell us where you are listening from. Thank you for staying until the end. I wish you good health, peace in your home, and I'll see you again in the next story on Revenge Glow.